Okay. Hello, who's on? Can you hear me? Dan and Kathy, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. I can.
You can hear me. Okay, good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And you, Rabbi?
Thank God. Thank
Good.
God. Okay, we're going to start on time because I have to leave very promptly by 1:30 latest. It's not a very long chapter. Can you see the text on the screen share?
Yes.
You see the Rambam text there on your screen?
Yeah, it's in the little corner here. Well, I've got it on the corner.
Kathy, do you see the Rambam text on your screen?
Yeah, here we go. Okay.
Chapter 3, you got it there? You see it on your screen?
Yes, chapter 3. Yeah.
Okay. Dan, can you hear me? Do you have the Rambam on your screen, the text? Okay, I'm starting promptly at 1, regardless of how many people are here.
Hi, Rabbi. Sorry, I was on a phone call. I can hear you.
Do you see the screen share, the chapter, the text?
Yes, 100%.
Great. Okay, I've got to stop promptly, even if it's just the two of you, because I've got to leave early.
No problem. No problem. Thank you.
Okie dokes. Hello, Kent.
Hi everyone. Hi Rabbi.
Thank you. Good moed. Hope you're having a good Yom Tov season, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep.
Okay, I'm going to start promptly because I have to leave by 1:30 latest. Sorry I couldn't do Monday. I had a funeral. When people pass away over Shabbos and Yom Tov, it's sort of first come, first serve. They don't get to negotiate when the rabbi's available. Hello, John. Hello, Dennis.
Hi John.
Okay. Okay. Is it 1 o'clock?
Yep. 30 seconds to go.
Or is it 12:59? Okay. Okay, welcome one and all. I trust you're having a good Sukkot and a good Yom Tov season, and may we all be sealed for a good year. And okay. Okay, I'm ready to roll. Okay. Hello, Monty. Hello, Dennis. Okay, chapter 3. This is going to conclude the laws of tzitzis. Some interesting stuff. Okay, ready to roll. Hope you can see the text and hear me. Halacha number 1, a garment to which the Torah obligates a person to attach tzitzit, the fringes, must meet the following requirements. A, it has to have 4 or more than 4 corners. and B, it must be large enough to cover both the head and the majority of the body of a child who's able to walk on his own. And they say about a 9-year-old or something. That's why a scarf is a four-cornered garment, but I've never seen tzitzit on a scarf because it's not big enough. And C, it should be made of either wool or linen. Okay. Number 2, if it's made of other fabrics besides wool and linen, for example, silk, cotton, camel's wool, hare's wool, goat's wool, they're required to have tzitzit by rabbinic decree. So today you can get tzitzit in cotton. And many people wear cotton tzitzit because it's cooler in the summer. I and many others insist on wearing woolen tzitzit, which is a higher standard. So that's interesting to know here that it's rabbinic if it's not wool or linen. Okay. Now it says al arba kanfot kesutcha, that you must put the tzitzit on the 4 corners. So we see from this that it has to have 4 corners, but we understand it to be a minimum of 4 corners, which means if it has 3, it does not require to have tzitzit, but if it has 5 or more, it does. So he says that why do I obligate a garment of 5 corners and exempt a garment of 3 corners? Neither has 4 corners. The Torah speaks of a 4-cornered garment because a 5-corner garment does have 4 corners, whereas a 3-corner garment does not have 4 corners. But if you have 5 corners, you only have to do tzitzis on the 4 corners, and it should be those that are furthest apart. Halacha number 4. If it's made of cloth and its corners are leather, it requires tzitzit. If the whole garment is leather and the corners are cloth, it does not require tzitzit. So the main garment is the issue, and we said before it should be wool or linen. Leather is exempt. If 2 people own the same garment, they're partners. So it still requires tzitzit because it says in the plural, on the corners of their garments, which is plural. So we see even if there's more than one owner of the garment, it will still require tzitzit. If it's a wool garment, he says, the white strands, the tzitzit, the fringes on the 4 corners should be made of wool as well. If it's a garment of linen, then the tzitzit should be made of linen. Why? Because we're not supposed to wear wool and linen together. Who knows what wool and linen together is called in the Torah language? You can unmute yourself and tell us. There's a term for wool and linen garments which we're not allowed to wear. It's called, anybody?
Shatnez.
Shatnez. Thank you very much. Shatnez is the term. It's a biblical term. You're not allowed to wear wool and linen garments. So if you have a wool garment, your tzitzit should be of wool. If you have a linen garment, your tzitzit should be of linen. Now the truth is, if you look at number 6, one might think that it should be permitted, the second paragraph, because shatnez is permitted to be used for tzitzit, as evident from the fact that the chelet, the blue wool dye, which I assume you've learned about in previous chapters, is made using woolen strands. Chelet is wool, it's blue wool, and yet you have to place it on a linen garment. So by biblical law, you may put wool tzitzit on a linen garment, and you would not be in violation of shatnez. Why? Because the principle here is that a positive commandment supersedes the negative commandment. So the positive commandment is to have tzitzit. The negative commandment is not to have shatnez, wool and linen. So the positive commandment of tzitzit overrules and takes precedence, priority over the shatnez. However, that's only if it's impossible to observe both simultaneously. Here, you can observe both. If you have a wool garment, just use woolen tzitzit. If you have a linen garment, use linen tzitzit. You don't have to do the opposite and then get into dangerous, murky waters. So if it's possible to observe both, one should. If not, if you only have a linen garment and woolen tzitzit, and you have no other, you're stuck on an island and you cannot get anything else, then you may. Therefore, he says, tchelet, which is blue wool, should not be attached to a linen garment for the same reason. Okay, now he gives another reason. This is not because the prohibition against shatnez supersedes the mitzvahs, but rather it's a rabbinical decree imposed lest one wear the garment at night when one is not required to wear tzitzit. Why are we not required to wear tzitzit at night? It's only a daytime commandment because the verse in the last chapter of the Shema says, Ureitem oto, and you shall see them. Can you see in the dark? No, especially in biblical times, they didn't have electricity. So when it was dark, when it was nighttime, it was dark. You couldn't see anything. So because it says you should see the tzitzit, we learn from this that it's only a mitzvah of daytime. Now, if it's not a biblical commandment to wear tzitzit at night, and you have tchelet blue wool in your linen garment, you're now in violation of shatnez, because it's no longer a biblical commandment to wear tzitzis at night. So that's why he says not to do it. Number 8. So you're not obligated to wear it at night, but you are permitted to wear tzitzis at night. And there are people who are fussy and they make a point of wearing tzitzit at night under their pajamas. In fact, they have a special tzitzit just for the night. So you're allowed to, even though you're not obligated. So you may not say a bracha at night. Normally, you say a bracha on the tzitzit. So those of us who are adults and wear a big talus when we daven, we say the bracha, which we'll soon see, lihitatef b'tzitzit, to put on tzitzit, and that covers the small talit katan that we wear under our shirts. If you're a single guy and you don't wear a talus when you daven, then there's another bracha, asher kisham tzivanu al mitzvat tzitzit, that boys and who don't wear a big talus would say on the small talus katan that they wear under their shirts. And so here he says, what bracha do we say? That's the bracha we say when we put on our talit gadol, our big talit. And you may not make a bracha at night because it's not a biblical commandment to wear it at night. The only time, who can tell us the only time, unmute yourself, tell me the only time when you see people in shul wearing a talus at night?
Yom Kippur, Kol Nidre.
Yom Kippur. But the law on Yom Kippur is you have to put on the talus with a bracha before sunset. Yeah. So sunset in Johannesburg at Yom Kippur time is usually a few minutes after 6. Kol Nidre usually starts at 6. So if you come on time and you put on your talit before sunset, you're okay. If you come late and it's already after sunset, then you should not you should not make a bracha on your talit. The other time we see in many of our shuls a talit being worn at night is when, besides Yom Kippur? Any suggestions?
Simchas Torah.
Simchas Torah?
Before you carry the Torah.
The people who carry the Torah put on a talus. Very good. But you don't have to resort to once a year Simchas Torah. You can look every night at Ma'ariv. The Chazan puts on a talus, right?
Yeah.
In most shuls, the Chazan wears a talus. However, he does not make a bracha. People don't know this. The Chazan, when he puts on a talus to lead the service in shul, should not say the bracha because it's not a mitzvah. There's no mitzvah at night. It's only for kavod hatzibur, it's called. Out of respect for the congregation, it's not nice, it's not befitting, it's not appropriate that a person should be a chazan without a talus. So that's just, he puts it on, but no bracha. Now, what happens when you have to go to the loo in the middle of davening? So we all know, we take off our talis and we either we leave it in our seat or we hang it up outside the loo. Some shuls are very organized. They have special hooks for the talis outside the loo. What about the small talis that we wear under our shirts? If I have to take that off every time I go to the loo, I'm going to have to get half undressed in the corridor. So number 9 tells us it is actually permissible to enter the lavatory, that's a toilet, or a bathhouse wearing tzitzit. So strictly speaking, you could probably take the big talus into the toilet as well, but it is considered disrespectful, and we do not do it today. And we would certainly discourage people from doing that. So if you see somebody going into the toilet with their talus, you may tell them that you're not supposed to wear your big talus in the toilet, but the small talus katan under our shirts, it's permissible. What happens if your tzitzis tear? You can throw the tzitzis out. You don't have to put them in shemus, because it's really a tool of the mitzvah rather than the mitzvah itself. It's forbidden to sell a garment with tzitzit to a Gentile unless you remove the tzitzit. Not because it's holy, but because we're worried for security reasons. Maybe this Gentile wants to dress up like a Jew and get access to the shul. The CSO will stop him outside and he'll say, "What do you mean? I'm wearing tzitzit. Look at me. I'm a Jew." Then he'll come in and God forbid he'll be a terrorist. So do not sell, give tzitzis to a non-Jew because it could be a security risk. Women, servants, minors are not required by the Torah to wear tzitzit. It is a rabbinic obligation to teach women and servants who are not halachically Jewish, who want to wear tzitzit, may do so, but without a blessing. Apparently, Rashi, the great biblical commentator, Rashi had daughters only. Apparently, his daughters wore tzitzit or talis, but it says here that they should not make a bracha. A tumtum and an androgynous and androgynous, that means someone whose sexuality, whose gender is confused. Tumtum is the genitalia is hidden, and we're not sure what they are. Androgynous seems that they have both. Well, there's a term for it today. I know Casta Semenya had problems because she displayed certain male hormones or something. So androgynous means if you have both male and female signs. So he says they're obligated in all positive commandments because we're not sure what their status is. So just in case, they should wear it, but not make a bracha. Number 10, what is the nature of the obligation? So strictly speaking, according to Torah law, if you happen to have a garment of 4 corners, then you're obligated to put on tzitzit. What if you don't have a garment of 4 corners? Then you're under no obligation. So if somebody wants to get away without wearing tzitzit, he just has to make sure not to have a 4-cornered garment. However, we would not look kindly about such a person. Number 11, even though a person is not obligated to purchase a talit and a wrapping to be able to have tzitzis, he should always try to be wrapped in a garment which requires tzitzis so that he can fulfill the mitzvah. We're looking to do more mitzvahs, not less mitzvahs. We're not looking for loopholes. We're not looking to get away with it. We're looking for opportunities. Every mitzvah is building a bridge to Hashem. Every mitzvah is bonding with God. We should look for more such opportunities, not less. So therefore, even though strictly speaking, you're not obligated to have tzitzis unless you have a 4-corner garment, we go out of our way to buy a pair of tzitzit or to buy a talit, which is a four-corner garment, which has the tzitzit. So we can do the mitzvah, and we say a bracha. And number 12, to conclude, the person should always be careful regarding the mitzvah of tzitzit, because the Torah considered it equal to all the mitzvot. So you have a scale, and you put tzitzis on one side and the other 612 mitzvahs on the other side, it's going to balance. Why? Because what do we say in the last chapter of the Shema about tzitzit? Ureitem oto uzachartem et kol mitzvot Hashem. You shall see the tzitzis and thereby remember all the mitzvahs of God. I'm sure you heard about this, right? Why does looking at the tzitzis remind you of all the mitzvahs? You must have learned it in the previous chapter. Unmute yourself and tell us.
Especially if there's blue, it would remind you of the sky and therefore the heavens, therefore of Hashem.
And even if it's not blue, how else is it, are we reminded of all the mitzvahs?
By
Strings.
600.
6 strings. The knots.
Eight strings, eight
Five.
strings on each corner. The gematria, the
The knots.
the numerical value of the Hebrew word tzitzit is 600
130.
plus
Yeah.
8 strings plus 5 knots. Above the strings, if you count, you'll see 5 knots. 8 plus 5 is 13 plus 600 gives us the magic number of Taryag, 613 mitzvahs. So when you look at the tzitzis, you see 613. So you're reminded of all the mitzvahs of Hashem. So therefore, in a sense, he says that tzitzis is considered equal to all the mitzvahs. And therefore, we should look for opportunities to do this mitzvah rather than for loopholes not to do it. Okay, we finished quickly because I wasn't in a rush today. Sorry for that. Any questions?
One thing which came up, Rabbi, I saw in like almost a comical thing, wearing the four-cornered mask.
Oh, yeah. That's a new one. I haven't heard that one before. Okay, so I said before, maybe you joined us late, Martin. Good point.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was a little bit late. Sorry.
So I did mention at the beginning, in the first halacha or the second halacha, look at, if you go back to the text, which I already closed, sorry.
It's okay, I'll go back just now.
It's number 1. Halacha number 1 states that it has to have 4 or more corners, and it has to be large enough to cover the head and the greater portion of at least a 9-year-old child.
Okay.
So it has to be a certain minimum size. And therefore, the mask or even a scarf does not meet the minimum size, and therefore masks and scarves are not obligated. I had an illustrious predecessor in the Sidnim Shul. His name was Rabbi Pupko of blessed memory. Some of you may remember him or may have heard all kinds of stories about him. But he was, one of the things he was famous for is he once got up at the pulpit, apparently, before my time, and he wagged his finger at all those who are wearing those small scarf-like talesim. And he said, get those shmatis off of you, buy a proper talis. I don't think that went down too well, but his point was a good point. We should not wear those scarf-like talesim are really, it's made for babies at Britain, really. A proper talis should cover head and shoulders of the person wearing it. So if you have an old-fashioned scarf-like talis, I would encourage you to go to the shops at your earliest convenience and buy a proper talis, which should cover head and shoulders. It should cover most of your body. A talit katan under the shirt, I think the minimum size for an adult is 18 or 20 inches wide. Has to be an amma. Amma is a foot and a half, 18 inches minimum. Some say 24 inches. What is that in metric? About what? About
Probably half a meter.
half a meter. Okay. So it has to basically cover the bulk of the person. Any other questions? Last call, or I gotta run to my next arrangement. Okay, I
Thank
wish you all Moadim L'Simcha, good Moed, have a good Yontif. Remember, Friday night is Shabbos Shmini Atzeret, Sunday Simchat Torah. I wish you a good conclusion to Sukkot and good Yontif and a great new year. May we all be finally sealed in the book of life and health and happiness. Hashem should bless you for all your regular commitments to Torah study. God bless you all.
Man.
Bye, gesund, guys. I'm on my way.
Beautiful.
Thanks, Rabbi. Bye.
This was just a once off on Wednesday. Next week I'm back on Mondays, please God.